All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Money Talks. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Had an election. Obviously, the whole world's gone crazy. On that note, happy Friday the 13th to everyone. Before we get into the latest on crypto and Bitcoin, I have to do a special shout out to our friends in Asia. Those of you suffering from the typhoon, I understand hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. We have huge user base in the Philippines, for example, and our heart and thoughts go and prayers go out to everyone affected by the typhoons. We hope that you all come through this safe and sound. And as I said, our heartfelt thoughts and prayers are with all of you. So please be safe. Okay, so we've got a lot to talk about. Crazy week. Obviously, the thing on everybody's mind right now is what's going on with crypto and Bitcoin, and we've got a Bitcoin Cash hard fork coming up, and we'll get into all of your questions. Uh, uh, with all of this, what I call currency debasement going on, there's a lot of questions about how a falling dollar will affect the price of cryptocurrencies and the application of cryptocurrencies. We'll get into that as well. So really quick, let's just do a check on Bitcoin. So we're at about 16,200. We are up 42% in the last 30 days. Hopefully, all of you have been paying attention. I have been on a social media rant and rampage the last few weeks, pushing all of you to get into crypto as fast as you can. Again, that's just my perspective. You should all do your homework. We're here to give you as much information as we can to educate you and help you make your own informed decisions. So before we get into our AMA and talk about our contest winner, by the way, I want to talk to you about this week's talking points. And what I really want to get into is this idea of why I don't think people can fully appreciate, right, how I can be so bullish on Bitcoin as an unbelievable investment opportunity without understanding something about the history of money, right? So there are awesome books out there if you want to read about it in detail. But I want to spend just a couple of moments talking about my simple perspective on why the history of money is so important to understanding Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So for thousands of years, people have transacted, right? Whether it's barter, collectibles, IOUs, ledger entries, currencies have all had their place in the history of economics. Barter is the simplest form of transaction. Two sheep in exchange for one bag of rice is a simple barter transaction. Collectibles have taken dozens of forms from precious metals, gold, to yap stones, or even seashells. In theory, any item's value could be negotiated to be the equivalent of some collectible. An IOU means that if you give me two sheep today, I promise to give you the equivalent of two sheep or possibly more than two sheep in the future. Generally, this IOU is recorded as an explicit or implicit contract between two parties. Ledger entries allow productivity to be shared across a larger group of people. So if I provide something to the group, such as time spent building a hut, I would receive credit in a ledger. If you take something from the group, so for example, a sheep or a cow to feed your family, you would have a debit in the ledger. If your credits and debits get too far out of whack, the group may ban you or forcibly take your possessions. So in small groups, a ledger can completely replace the need for other forms of money if everyone's participating in some small economy. Now, lastly, currencies have taken two forms. The first being what I would call collectible backed currencies, such as currency backed by gold. The second being government backed currency, where the currency is not backed by anything other than the government. In other words, police with guns and the judicial system. That would be the only legal tender you're allowed to use to fulfill obligations such as tax payments. Today, every government in the world forces us to transact in government-backed currency only. So the last vestiges of gold or collectible-backed currency disappeared 30 years ago. Okay. In this week's newsletter, I had a chart which shows, I think, an example of almost 100 or so currencies that have failed over time. But over time, every form of money created by man has failed in some way, with one exception. Gold-backed money has been a resounding success throughout history in maintaining its value. We'll come back to gold in a moment. In the meantime, governments don't want money to retain its value. Governments want to erode the value of your money to incentivize you to spend it in order to manage their economy. I refer to the government-driven economy as this great house of cards. Now, it was evident, if you're paying attention in 2008, what happens when the great house of cards starts to fail. Okay? Excuse me one second. When the great house of cards starts to fail, things get really scary real quick. This is the great lie of government-driven capitalism versus true free enterprise. I would claim that the latter, true free enterprise, doesn't truly exist today, but will soon enough. Government-driven capitalism was great to get us all this far, but its time is coming to an end. I don't mean tomorrow, I don't mean necessarily in 5 years, but it's going to happen. Free enterprise is on the horizon. So let's talk about currency inflation, right? Which brings us back to crypto. Yapstones were actually a very good store of value for certain items, hundreds or actually thousands of years ago. But they were terrible. They were massive pieces of rock, basically. They were terrible for bartering in small items. They were too big to move, and proving ownership was often difficult. It was also difficult to use them for bartering in cheap items as the stones were considered too valuable. You couldn't take a yapstone and break it up into tiny pieces. It just wasn't possible to do that, right? So currency, on the other hand, is very easy to move around, very easy to transact in. So why does currency keep failing? To understand that, we need to understand the difference between price inflation and currency inflation. Currency inflation exists in order to prevent deflation or contraction in an economy. Governments don't like that. They don't like when an economy contracts because it makes them look bad. People get very unhappy and they blame the governments if they aren't having more jobs, higher paying jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Governments believe they can affect the unemployment rate directly by growing and contracting the money supply. This is proven to be true. However, when the currency is based on gold, there's only so much currency inflation that can be achieved since the gold supply is obviously limited. Without a gold standard currency, inflation can be infinite by simply printing more money, right? They simply increase the money supply, right? Pressing the print button, right? They simply increase the money supply without end in the belief that inflating an economy that is in a deflationary mode will create jobs while keeping the value of the currency from falling at the same rate. That is a folly, as history has proven time and again. As stated, currency inflation causes price inflation, but the two are different. People tend to focus more on price inflation as it affects them more in the short run. But in the long run, currency inflation is way more important. Think of currency inflation as death by 1,000 small nicks and cuts over a protracted period of time. Look at it this way. If you owned the Mona Lisa and found out it was worth $1 billion, and then found out that Da Vinci had painted two Mona Lisas back to back, it would stand to reason that the first one would now be worth less than $1 billion, probably a lot less. However, when we keep printing money, we seem to forget this basic idea. Now, part of the reason Americans forget this idea, Americans in particular forget this idea, is that so many other countries utilize US dollars, which creates artificial demand. You've heard this idea referred to as the dollar's reserve currency status. Other countries are less likely to forget this idea, right? Just ask people in Argentina, Belarus, Hungary, Peru, Zimbabwe, Turkey, Venezuela, any one of over 50 countries, if printing more money decreases the value of their currency dramatically. All right, let's come back to this gold standard idea. Okay. What is a gold standard? So a gold standard is a monetary system where any country's currency or paper money has value directly linked to gold. Very simple. This amount of paper is equal to this amount of gold. With the gold standard, countries agreed to convert paper money into a fixed amount of gold. A country that uses the gold standard sets a fixed price for gold and buys and sells gold at that price. That fixed price is used to determine the value of the currency. So, for example, if the US sets the price of gold at 500 an ounce, the value of the dollar would be 1/500th of an ounce of gold. Okay? So, the gold standard is not used by any government today. Britain stopped using the gold standard in 1931, and the US followed suit in 1933 and abandoned any remnants of the system in 1973. So the gold standard was completely replaced by fiat money, which is, again, the term we use to describe currency that is used because of a government's order, or fiat. That's where the term comes from, that the currency must be accepted as a form of payment. So in the US, for instance, the dollar is fiat money mandated by the government. In Nigeria would be the naira, for example. So the gold standard has been a resounding success in that it has proved an outstanding means of preserving wealth and wealth creation for over 4,000 years. That makes sense given that there's a relatively fixed supply. I say relatively fixed since we do find more gold every year. But this property of wealth preservation is exactly why governments don't like gold. When an economy is contracting, governments want to flood an economy with money, such as what's happening now during COVID. But with a fixed supply of money, they can't do that. Gold not only fixes the supply of money, but trade imbalances can also mean that a country's gold supply can shrink dramatically. So while gold-backed money is excellent at preserving your wealth, it's bad as a tool for managing an economy. As history has shown, so are governments. Uh, we're a big fan of Saifedean Ammous, who's appeared on our podcast a few times. He has an excellent book called The Bitcoin Standard, which describes in great detail why the gold standard works so well. And there's also a really good brief history of the gold standard on Investopedia, which I linked to in the newsletter. The bottom line is that poor government planning and policies have led to an almost perfect inverse correlation between the value of money and the value of gold. This did not need to be the case. Okay, so this leads us to kind of the digital realm. So now we're hearing all about stable coins and central bank digital currencies. Maybe these can save us, I don't know. But in the same way that paper money is used to tokenize gold in the analog world, we've, via this idea of stablecoins and CBDCs, have figured out how to create digital tokenization of fiat money, right? Central banks, particularly in China, are now looking to get in on the action by issuing their own central bank issued digital currency, again, or CBDC. The difference between a central bank digital currency and a stablecoin is that the central bank digital currency, or CBDC, is the fiat money itself, whereas a stablecoin is a token representing fiat money stored in a bank account somewhere, usually in the same country that it's issued in. In other words, CBDCs require one less layer of trust to make the tokenized fiat currency work. So USDC, Tether, DAI, TrueUSD, Paxos all use Ethereum smart contracts to store dollars. So while Ethereum is currently the blockchain of choice for tokenizing fiat, that will likely change in the future with more currencies being issued across many different blockchain platforms. Stellar, an investor in Abra, for example, is a highly scalable platform for creating new currencies. USDC announced support for Stellar. Tether was originally created on Omni, but now supports multiple chains. The biggest risk in centralization around Ethereum is scalability. It's now impossible to do person-to-person transfers of less than $10 on the Ethereum blockchain due to scalability issues. Ethereum 2.0 promises to change this, but it's going to take a while, right? And it has some technology risk because it's unproven. But in the meantime, the value of stablecoins is clear. The ability to tokenize money in the crypto world so that crypto users can avoid the banking system while moving in and out of traditional cryptos is a big deal. And it's a big time hassle saver. In the future, stablecoins and CBDCs will be used for money transfer, lending, and other payment services traditionally served by banks. Ultimately, however, stablecoins erode in value along with underlying fiat currency they represent. That's the irony of these poorly named stablecoins, right? So in some ways, they're kind of like putting lipstick on a pig, right? If the value of the currency is going to zero, converting it to a stablecoin or CBDC won't save the fiat currency. It will make it more useful in the short term. Okay, so this brings us inexorably to Bitcoin. Bitcoin combines two of the concepts of money we talked about earlier into a new form of currency, collectibles and the ledger. Bitcoin is a form of digital collectible in that it's simply scarce, just like gold. It is scarcer, in fact, than any other item used as money in modern history. Bitcoin's ledger or blockchain implements a banking system that requires no village accountant to track its whereabouts. The ledger does all the heavy lifting of tracking debits and credits across every user globally. No central trust is required. But unlike gold, Bitcoin is provably scarce over time. In fact, we know exactly the number of Bitcoin that will ever exist. We have no idea how much gold there is in our planet, solar system, galaxy, or universe for that matter. So while fiat inflation will ultimately lead to its demise, it will help accelerate Bitcoin to new and stratospheric heights. Never before have we had a hard asset like this, and I can't imagine that there will be another one anytime soon. Okay, that's my rant on the future of money and Bitcoin. As I mentioned, let's see, we're doing pretty good. We are at about 16,200 as of a few minutes ago, which is fantastic. Like I said, Bitcoin is up about 40% over the past 30 days or so, which is great. I've got my trusty app ready to go. We're going to do some demos and answer a whole bunch of questions. So keep the questions coming. I can see we've got them coming in already. Let's see. So I'm going to go to some questions first. Then we have a contest winner who I want to mention. So I'm going to make you wait and suffer a little bit longer for that. The other thing I should mention is I know we've got viewers on Periscope, / Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, even Instagram. We do have Abra support staff that are answering your personal questions in those channels, and so I'll try to focus the questions here on more on stuff that's relevant to all of us. But we will try to answer your support questions directly in line, and if we don't get to them during the AMA, you can send an email to support@abra.com. Okay, so let me take some random questions here to start. This one is related to what I just talked about. Arconomics asks how Bitcoin will fare alongside central bank digital currencies in the next 5 to 10 years. So Arconomics, I think it's very simple. Central bank digital currencies in one regard are what I would call putting lipstick on a pig, insofar that if your currency is failing, turning it into a digital currency is not going to save it because it doesn't prevent governments from printing more of it without end, right? It simply makes it easier to use. So in the case of like COVID, they can print a whole bunch and put it directly in your wallet, okay? Doesn't prevent the value from going to zero over time, right? Just makes it easier to get it in your wallet. Bitcoin, on the other hand, as a hard money, is going to, in my humble opinion, skyrocket in value over time, right? As the hardest asset that's ever been known to man. So I actually think it's going to fare great. And I think CBDCs and stablecoins will make it easier for people to get into and out of cryptocurrencies over the next few years. And then eventually people will just stay in cryptocurrencies and won't bother with the fiat currencies anymore. Again, that's my opinion. If the government is really going to enter the cryptocurrency industry, what do you think they are concerned about to regulate? And will this have positive or negative impact? This is from Michael. Michael doesn't have a last name. And thank you for Abra Global for this great app. Thank you for that. So I think that as governments get into this industry, they're going to be concerned about knowing who's using the currency. And this is a big problem that I have with government issued digital currencies. Today, paper money is truly a bearer instrument that enables private transactions. In other words, in English, if I'm holding the dollars that I transact with and I hand it directly to somebody else, no one else needs to know about that transaction. It's private, it's between two parties. And that's one of the best properties of paper money. I worry that central bank digital currencies will undo this such that the government is watching everything we do. And in my opinion, they have no right to do that. And so if we don't stand up and demand that governments make central bank digital currencies private to the same extent that paper money is private, right? The nanny state is just going to balloon, and that's not a good thing, right? So it could be a positive impact to answer your question, but it could also be a negative impact. And a lot of it's dependent upon us. If we stand up and scream that we don't want more government oversight integrated into our money, then there's a better chance that we won't get it. Okay. Gustavo says BTC dominance is over 60%. Do I think this leading role will be kept in the future despite so many new coins and tokens and the long-awaited Ethereum 2.0? Okay, so this is a good question. I actually don't look at it in terms of dominance, and here's why. I see Bitcoin and Ethereum as playing two completely different roles, right? And so when you look at it from a different perspective, you could say, well, okay, yes, the market capitalization shows that Bitcoin is dominant, but the utilization rate on chain actually says Ethereum is dominant. What I mean by that is if you look at the volume of transactions happening via Ethereum based stablecoins, it dwarfs the monetary value of the amount being transacted in Bitcoin, to my knowledge, right? And that's going to grow now with Ethereum 2.0. Now, the market cap of Bitcoin as digital gold should always be higher than Ethereum, in my opinion, because Ethereum is meant to be an application platform, meant to be the world's computer, enabling things like stablecoins, enabling things like DeFi and other types of smart contracts for IoT and other interesting applications that all of you are going to come up with in the future. Okay, so I think it's more nuanced than just market capitalization based dominance. Okay, so good question. Matt asks, how do I allocate my crypto portfolio? Matt, I've talked about this in the past. I'm all in on Bitcoin. It's a huge portion of my personal investment portfolio. I do own some Ethereum. Every once in a while, I come in and out of altcoins. The altcoins I tend to more actively trade, and the Bitcoin position just stays and hopefully grows. Ethereum, similar, but it's a smaller, much smaller piece of my portfolio. I may grow Ethereum over time, depending upon what happens with 2.0. We'll see. And my concern about Ethereum, of course, is that they can inflate it at will at some point, and I don't think they're going to do that. But that is a concern in terms of an investment. I think as the world's computer, it holds tremendous promise. But again, I tend to actively trade the altcoins and tend to just hold Bitcoin. And there's times when I'm holding no altcoins, and there's times when I'm holding a bunch. Okay. All right. And again, do your homework. We provide a ton of content on Abra.com, educating people about, providing you information about what's different about each of these altcoins, how they work. And the Twitterverse has user groups on every single one of these coins that people like you who are passionate about any given altcoin. Okay. Melik asks, can Bitcoin overcome gold in market capitalization and be a real store of value? Excellent question. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to far surpass gold because it has so many more uses long term than gold. As the technology evolves, I believe that you will start to see things like Lightning and other kind of second layer and sidechain technologies enable payments via Bitcoin, right? So in the first generation of crypto-based payments, I think you're going to start to see stable coins used for remittances, / money transfer, settling credit card transactions. I wouldn't be surprised if all the card networks adopt stable coins that allows them to bypass the acquirers to make more money on the transaction, for example. Long term, Bitcoin will be a much better store of value because the fiat currencies are going to fail, as I've mentioned many times. At that point, these new technologies like Lightning will enable us to use Bitcoin for payments in small dollar amounts, right? Which is something that we don't have to worry about today. Okay, so Mr. Roomba has decided to play, so we're going to pause him. All right, so good question there. Let's see what else. So Shella asks, how can you convince potential users to use Abra instead of other crypto wallets? And do I think cryptocurrencies will be here a long time amidst the financial crisis? Good question about Abra. So obviously I get asked all the time, why am I so bullish on Abra versus other crypto wallets? Well, obviously I'm biased since I started Abra, but let me give you some tips if you're talking to other people about why they should use Abra. So there's a few things, right? So I'm in here in my Abra app, and I think there's a few things that are super important, right? So Abra is the only global app, meaning it works pretty much in every country in the world, that enables you to buy Bitcoin, trade between altcoins, go back to any one of like a dozen currencies based upon which country you're in, right? We support currencies all over the world. And it's highly likely that we support your home country's currency. We also allow you to earn interest in our Abra interest account, and you can see that on dollars you can earn 10%, and most cryptos you can earn 4.5 or 5%. Okay, that's very unique to Abra. This whole interest account model. You can move back and forth between the interest account and the trading account, right? And I don't know any other app in the world that has that breadth of capability that's available globally. Okay, so it's pretty simple, right? If people really want a one-stop shop app for everything to do with crypto, I believe it's Abra. Okay, so good question there. Do I think cryptocurrencies will be here a long time amidst the financial crisis? And yes, I do, because I think that eventually all traditional government issued fiat currencies are going to fail. Whether it takes 20 or 50 or 100 years, I don't know. To a certain degree, it doesn't really matter if you're prepared, right? As lifespans grow, increase, as people live longer, the acuteness of having a currency that is a poor store of wealth, such as the dollar, is going to become real. And it's going to push people more and more towards digital currencies. Millennials are going to want money for the internet, pushing them towards digital currencies, right? It's the perfect storm for the migration away from government backed money. They have to fight it because they need the tax revenues, and it's going to be very difficult to maintain the tax base with Bitcoin. But the transition is inevitable, in my opinion. Okay, so not only is it going to be here for a long time, it's going to be here forever, in my humble opinion. Okay, thank you for that. So Caesar asks, why do the interest accounts pay such high interest? Does it mean that we're taking too much risk? That is an excellent question. So I've talked about this in the past. Let me give a quick synopsis of how these Abra interest accounts work. Again, to be clear, Abra pays interest in dollars, which we convert to stablecoins. If you wire us dollars, we automatically convert it to a stablecoin. So if you deposit it in the interest account, you're simply good to go. You can deposit your Bitcoin, your Litecoin, your Bitcoin Cash, your ETH, whatever, and we'll allow you to earn interest in the Abra interest account on those products. How do we earn that interest on your behalf? A couple of things, okay? 80%, more than 80% of the interest generated on your deposits goes back to you. Okay, so unlike the banks who keep the vast majority of the interest, we pay the vast majority of the interest back to you, our users. Okay, how do we generate that interest? It's very simple. We run what's called an institutional lending desk, some fancy words, which means that we lend to businesses. Now, all banks lend to businesses. Why are we able to generate such high rates? A couple of reasons. One, like I said, the vast majority of the interest goes to you. Two, the loans are using cryptocurrencies. The borrowers are usually collateralizing or often collateralizing a part of that loan in a different cryptocurrency. So in other words, if I'm lending dollars, they may be collateralizing the loan in Bitcoin, which protects you as the depositor because I have collateral if they don't make a payment. Now, we've never had to keep the collateral from a lender for defaulting on a loan, but if it did happen, we have the collateral. Okay, so this is a much better model from a risk perspective than traditional bank deposits. As you know, the interest rates are much higher. It's also safer in some ways. even in insurance-based accounts like FDIC in the U.S., they only protect you up to a certain amount, right? And they simply fan out the losses to lots and lots of users. So I feel that Abra has created a very strong, reasonably safe model. It's nothing's guaranteed, but we take new institutional borrowers and we put them through a very rigorous due diligence process. We run an investment committee that analyzes each new borrower in terms of credit quality, defines what we would call collateral requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So this has made me comfortable enough where I keep my Bitcoin and my dollars with Abra in an interest account, for example. Okay, so I'm comfortable doing that. All right, so excellent question. If you have more questions here beyond what I asked, please ask them in the channel, and we'll go deeper on that. So crypto, let me get your name right. Crypto Lover Diego asks, what is margin trading and copy trading, and how do they work? All right, margin trading and copy trading are two different things. A little bit more advanced than what we typically talk about on Money Talks, but let me address both. So margin trading is very simply the ability uh, to borrow money that you're going to invest, right? So in other words, if you want to short Bitcoin at an exchange, you might actually borrow the Bitcoin using cash that's stored in your account as collateral, and then sell that Bitcoin. And if the price of Bitcoin goes down, you buy the Bitcoin back at a smaller amount, pay it back, and you keep the difference effectively. So that's kind of basically using other people's money to trade. Is the simplest way to think about margin, or basically using small amounts of your money to basically generate leverage, right, or increase the size of your bet, and that can actually cause you to gain more money faster or lose more money faster, depending upon the kind of bet you're making. Copy trading is simply some services allow you to enter into a trade that is simply a copy of somebody else's trade. It's something I would not recommend for most people. It's very dangerous unless you really, really know the other person you're copying and why you would do it. I strongly recommend that people who are actively trading do their own homework and make their own decisions. It's okay to look at what other people are doing, but please make your own decisions when you trade. Okay? All right, let's see what else. Richard asks, how can investing in crypto be affordable and easy, even for people who don't understand blockchain technology? So, Richard, I would say those are two different concepts, right? So think about it for a second. People invest in Apple and Microsoft stock all the time, or in the commodities world, invest in gold and oil all the time. Oil investors probably don't understand the mining, the drilling process for oil, or the mining process for gold, or understand the underlying technology used in a smartphone, if it's on for Apple or maybe the Windows OS technology details at Microsoft. They just go to their stockbroker and buy the shares. Now, when it comes to crypto, you should do your homework to understand, why the investment is interesting from a business perspective. But that's no different from investing in stocks, for example, right? So the Abra app makes it really easy to execute trades in any of these cryptocurrencies, right? You just press the exchange button at the bottom of the screen after you deposit money, and you can move your dollars or Bitcoin or any coin between any other itself and any other coin, very simply in the app. So we make it really easy to execute those trades and get into crypto and get out of crypto to and from your bank account. But understanding the underlying technology is no different than saying, okay, if I'm going to buy Apple shares, how much of what Apple does do I need to understand? Right? It's the same question, right? So you can do your homework online and read all about Bitcoin or Ethereum or Digibyte or Cardano, and make decisions based upon what you read and what you think is interesting, and where you think fundamentals and technicals are moving in a direction that would cause you to want to buy something. It's really that simple. Let's see. Alan asks, could I comment on the OCC letter? I'm not sure if you're talking about the comments that that Commissioner or the Comptroller Brooks made last week. Let me explain OCC again to people who, especially outside the U.S. OCC stands for Office of Comptroller of the Currency. It's a fancy name for the regulator that oversees federally chartered banks in the United States. Its head of the OCC is referred to as the Comptroller of the Currency, another fancy term, which basically means head of the OCC. In this case, the Comptroller Brooks published some comments that were particularly bullish on cryptocurrencies. Got some very negative feedback from some people in Congress who didn't like the fact that he was focused on this. And again, I think a lot of that is related to what I said before, where governments are simply not incentivized to support cryptocurrencies the way Comptroller Brooks has. And he was a lawyer, I believe, at Coinbase earlier in his career and has a very interesting perspective on all of this. And so I haven't really dug in detail on the comments, except to say I saw them as relatively bullish and think that it's interesting that we have somebody who, on the one hand, is a lawyer, on the other hand, understands crypto, is actually taking time in the middle of this pandemic and all the craziness going on in the world with governments trying to print money to actually make positive comments in his congressional testimony about cryptocurrencies. So that and about the potential for central bank digital currencies. Although I don't think the OCC and the Treasury are going to be focused on CBDCs at scale anytime soon. I think they'll let other countries do it first. So let's see. Kurt asks, what is the incentive to start staking Ethereum now? Kurt, that is an excellent question. So as you know, I've talked about it many times on Money Talks. We're now in the process of phase 0 for Ethereum 2.0, which means we need to get the amount of staked Ethereum to be a certain volume in order to turn on the staking, basically turn on phase 1, which would be the ability to use staked Ethereum to validate transactions. Okay, so if we don't get to that amount, the Ethereum will never basically really start the launch process for 2.0. So the pre-phase says, hey, if we don't have enough people staking in these validating nodes, we'll never be able to turn them on. So the network is basically incentivizing users for staking Ethereum early, effectively by paying interest. So the earlier you stake, the more interest you make. It's that simple, right? Now, there are other places and other ways to earn interest on Ethereum, such as with Abra. But if you really believe in Ethereum 2.0 as I do, you might want to actually contribute to the network. So Vitalik, for example, put a couple of $1 million into a staking node for Ethereum 2.0 to show the network that he fully supports the migration to 2.0 and how important phase 0 is. So I'd say it's a combination of your willingness to trust that you're going to earn interest through the staking system, combined with your strong belief that as an active participant in Ethereum 2.0, you're helping the system from a greater good perspective by staking now as opposed to later. And each person will make their own decision. I think eventually, almost everyone is going to have Ethereum staked somehow. Either most people won't run their own node, but they may hold it with Abra, and Abra may be staking it for them, or they may be using staking pools to earn interest. People will earn interest on Ethereum in different ways over time. But I'm pretty excited about it, and you should, we'll talk more about it in the future. But it's just started; it literally just launched this week, and so we'll see what happens over time. But it's a pretty exciting development, and you should definitely look into the ability to stake if you're into that. All right, let's see. Somebody asks, why doesn't Abra provide monthly statements? Actually, Abra does provide a transaction history for both trading and interest accounts. If you go into the app here, so if you click on the menu in the upper left corner, right, you can see transaction history. It's about 60% way down the page in the middle. If I click on transaction history, I can email the transaction history to myself. And that allows me to basically have any kind of tax statements or anything else I need to prepare, and should deal with any potential concerns you have about reconciling your own transaction history versus what you're seeing in the app. Okay, so good question there. Robert asks, I have previously stated that I'm bullish on Cardano. Is it more price or utilization that I'm bullish on? When I talk about altcoin projects, first and foremost, I'm talking about technology. right? As I've stated many times, I think altcoins are really important for the evolution of crypto and also for Bitcoin itself for one simple reason. Technology competition is really important. As digital gold, Bitcoin is going to evolve very slowly. And as time goes on, its evolution is going to happen slower and slower, right? That's a function of it being digital gold. Core developers are going to be very careful when they're making changes to an asset class worth 300, 400, 500 billion dollars, eventually $1 trillion. So by making changes, like for example, integrating Mimblewimble into Litecoin first, Litecoin shows us that it works and that we can trust it. And that's great, right? That's why I often refer to Litecoin as digital silver versus digital gold. Now, Cardano has some really interesting technology properties and scalability capabilities, and Charles and the team and his Cardano core developers have done an amazing job. And I'm really excited to see how Cardano gets used over time. It's very early days in all of this. So I tend to not focus too much of my initial interest on price. When I'm actively trading, I will look at price. But my interest on projects themselves is very technology based. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Let's see. We got a lot of questions here, so I'm going to jump around. Let me. I'm being reminded here. We have to get to our contest winner. Oh my goodness, how did I forget about our contest winner? All right, it's time. All right, so as you know, we're running now a weekly kind of contest. I don't know if we're going to keep doing it, although the interest level is pretty high. So let's see. The winner is Piamonte Sheila, Piamonte_SHIELA on Twitter. Piamonte Sheila, congratulations. We will reach out to you on Twitter for an update on how to get your winnings. And thank you so much to everyone who sent us comments and questions, participated in the contest. We really, really love it. And we've actually been pretty surprised at the level of response we've been getting. It's awesome. All right, let me take a couple more questions here. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, at the bottom of the video, there's a subscribe button. Please press the subscribe button. It really helps us promote the app and get better placement with Google and search results on YouTube and people searching for video. So press that subscribe button and support us to keep doing Money Talks, okay? So let's see. Warley Zambales Diaz asks, can you discuss the possible use cases of blockchain and crypto in the field of social media, content sharing, movies, music, and gaming? That's a lot, as well as possible regulatory challenges, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, a lot to unpack there. I do think that cryptocurrencies will eventually be used in social communities, similar to the example I gave you before for that village money where people were doing debits and credits. I've got a friend who's actually running a really interesting Discord channel right now on gaming, where he's created his own digital currency inside the social community where people get rewarded for participation. And then eventually they'll be able to use those rewards inside games. It's really fascinating. Discord is I'm an older guy. Discord is interesting, but it's really complicated to me. I thought Snapchat was tough, and then I found Discord. But anyway, people apparently love it. I found his experiment super interesting. I am bullish on kind of small community-based digital currencies in the future, particularly in gaming, where gaming assets and things like that have always been kind of popular and a key to being able to use the game. All right, good question. Let's see. So we've got a bunch of app-specific questions that I've been holding off on. So the first is, can you explain how I can take cash from my interest account and use it to buy Bitcoin and put the Bitcoin back in my interest account? Yes, I can do that. All right, so excellent question. So if I go into my interest account, okay, you see actually in this app, I don't have any money in the interest account, but if I go to click on, let's say, Bitcoin, that would show me my balance. Okay, so I would see that I have, let's say, 2 Bitcoin, maybe I have like, 32,000 of Bitcoin there. I would click on the 3 dots in the upper right corner. Okay, so you see the 3 dots up there, and it says transfer funds to trading BTC. What that would do is it would allow me to move the Bitcoin back, right, to my trading balance. right? So if you ever use like E-Trade, it would be like moving money between your cash and your stock trading account, for example, okay? So now what I can do is I can go back to my trading account and I can take my dollars or my Bitcoin and exchange them for whatever asset I want. So let's say that I moved dollars from my interest account back to the trading account. Now I can click on exchange at the bottom of the screen, click on the dollars, exchange them to Bitcoin, right? Type in the amount that I want to transfer. So let's say I want to transfer $5, right, to Bitcoin. I can review the transaction. Okay, and that's it. So now, of course I love Abra. So now I can basically take that Bitcoin that I've just created in my wallet. Okay, go back here. Oops, sorry. Go back here to my portfolio. I can now transfer, right, the $5 in the Bitcoin wallet to the interest-bearing account. Very simple. All right. So excellent questions. Keep them coming. And by the way, to transfer money back to the interest account, for those of you who haven't done it before, if you go to the interest account tab, click on the currency here, Bitcoin, right? And I can add Bitcoin. Now, I haven't actually set up this demo wallet yet. I haven't gone through the KYC process, so I'm not going to do it now in front of all of you, but that's how you do it. It's very simple. Okay. All right. So we have a couple more app-specific questions. Let's see. Somebody asking about how we already talked about how we generate the interest. So thanks for that. I'm not going to answer that again. How do I convert cash back to my bank accounts? Okay, very simple. I'm assuming, Mike, I assume you're in the US. So let me let me come back here. So if I'm in the app here, right? So if I go to the bottom right, right, it says withdraw, right? So you see there, right, it says add money, exchange, and then withdraw on the bottom right. If I click on withdraw, I can actually choose bank transfer, bank wire transfer, or send to an external crypto wallet, right? So all of the features are right there, and very, very simple. Okay. I understand that people who are on Instagram may not be able to see the demo because of the way Instagram centers this. I apologize for that. We'll work on moving the demo screen to the center in the future, but you'll be able to see the demo on the YouTube video. Okay. All right. So let's see. Let's take one more question here. So the next question is okay, that's a good one. All right, how can I move money from my Ethereum interest account to my Bitcoin interest account? All right, so let me move the demo screen over here for a second. Let me see if I can do that. I'm gonna try this. All right, so we're gonna move this demo over here for a second, and we're gonna do it this way. So, all right. So if I would go to my interest account here, all right, I'm going to go to my interest account here. Oh, there we go. Now I got it back. All right. So if I go to my interest account, right, I can basically choose my Bitcoin. Okay. And now I can basically click on the three dots in the upper right corner, and I can transfer the funds to trading BTC, right? I don't have any balance to transfer, but that's what I can do. Now, once I've transferred them back, right, I can click on my trading account. I can go to my Bitcoin balance. I can click on the exchange button in the bottom, right? I can transfer those Bitcoin to, click on Bitcoin. I can transfer those to Ethereum, right? And choose the amount. So let's say that I want to choose 0.0015, for example, which is, right? So, and click confirm, and then that would actually convert those to Ethereum, right? And then now when I go back to the interest account, right? So if I go back to my portfolio, if I go back to the interest account, I can choose Ethereum and click on add ETH, and that will allow me to transfer the Ethereum I just bought into the interest account. Very simple, okay? All right, so we are going on the hour here, so we're gonna stop there. Thank you so much for all of the awesome questions. We will have this video up for you and your friends to review momentarily. And thanks again for supporting Money Talks. We put a lot of work into this, and we're thrilled that we're thrilled that all of you have joined us. So okay, so again, have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, and to our friends in Asia, we hope you all come through this typhoon soon, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on Money Talks. Take care, everyone.